Man, Ty is so excited in there. I'll tell you what, this gave me some newfound respect for car racing.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, I've never been a car racing guy, but I've always been an Italian-American guy.
Oh, yeah. I could tell.
Hell yes. All right, welcome everybody to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dominic DiTolla, sitting here next to my co-host, Chris Quinn, and this is a first for the Sports Experience Podcast today. We're going to talk about car racing.
And I was going to say, it's pretty much every single aspect of car racing that this guy was in. He had his fingers in all of it, baby.
We talked about Pete Maravich transcending race hombre. This dude transcended all of car racing with his driving ability.
Mario Andretti.
Mario Andretti, born February 28th, along with his twin brother Aldo, in Montona, Italy, which is now on the Istrian peninsula, of course, but now a part of Croatia and formerly Yugoslavia. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is this is very important, and probably the reason he became such an American car racing star is I'm going to get spurgy on history with you for a moment. I'm just going to go full Asperger's for you. So in World War I, Italy was on the Allied side. And they had this idea of irredentism, where they would bring all of the Italian people into one country known as Italy. And there were pockets of heavily Italian populated places, not only in North Italy near Austria and Switzerland and Germany, but also as you headed towards the Adriatic down towards the Balkans. And where Montana is located is on the Istrian Peninsula, where Croatia is now currently. And after the First World War, because all of the Allies thought Italy didn't pitch in, and go look up the Battle di Isonzo and anything in the Piave, they definitely gave enough. They didn't give Italy the specific regions like Montana or any places on the Istrian Peninsula or along the Dalmatian coast to Italy post-war. They basically just set them and let them be and gave them to Yugoslavia. And because Andretti was born in 1940, even though they gave Italy all these Germanic-speaking areas in the north in the Alps, what ends up happening post-World War II, because Yugoslavia is a communist country, the Croats were part of the fascists, a number of them. What ends up happening post-World War II, 46 to about 1950, is they start expelling Italians in these large, heavily Italian-populated places, which had existed basically forever. And
so they start essentially expelling these Italians and differentiating who's Italian and who's Croatian, or at that time
Yugoslavian. Part of Yugoslavian. Yeah. And Andretti's family gets caught in the crosshairs.
Yep.
And fortunately for American racing, but unfortunately for the Andretti family, they're fucked.
Yeah, well, I thought I had a couple of quotes from him from his early life that I thought was so interesting. He born in 1940, he said they were essentially born into war. They didn't know anything other than war.
They had no idea.
And then they were moved into a refugee camp. So their beginning life was very much always around their family, always kind of in this very tight-knit area of his brother and his sister and his mom and his dad. And they said when they were expelled from Croatia, they would go around and like every family would be given like a little truck, and they'd be like, pack up your shit. You're out of here. And that was it.
That's how the commies handled business.
Yeah.
And they had no choice, even though they had been there for centuries and just ethnically Italian, living their life, doing their thing over there in Istria. Didn't matter. It didn't matter. They wanted every fascist or fascist adjacent. Obviously, they weren't fascist supporters, but I mean, anything that could be associated with it, just to leave. Yeah. And they were forced to leave. Like,
and his father was the manager essentially of like 6 or 7 farms, and had this life laid out for them that was essentially destroyed. And we could talk about other countries get, other citizens but we're talking to Andretti's, and
they had no
World War
allegiance.
II,
They were just farmers.
That's what I'm trying to get at. They were just literally citizens, farmers trying to get by, and they get moved into this refugee camp
in Lucca in Tuscany.
Yep, in Lucca, and he said a lot of people thought it was one of the worst, living situations, but he said his family was so happy that they didn't really realize it.
Yeah, even though he said his dad left everything behind, they left everything they knew behind, they were just grateful to basically be there and still
together.
Be a family because, under Tito, they were just murdering everyone. It's like, oh my God, we're all still here? All right, we'll take that and put it in the bank.
Because they lived in a room essentially the size of the room we're in right now, which is not very big, with 7 other families, and these little areas were essentially divided by army sheets. So very thin sheets divided entire families' living areas.
Yeah, and they had no choice. I mean, it was either you pack your shit and leave, or the commies are going to murder you.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's what ended up happening. But he was almost born into racing. Like, he was like Ricky Bobby, like, I want to go fast.
Yeah, no, that's what his mom said when he was like, him and his brother Aldo, very young, were very attracted to this racing. Like, they had little boxcar, races and shit like that.
Because I've seen pictures of, I'm not familiar with what they call it now. Sorry, Croatian people. I'm not familiar with what the new name, the Serbo-Croatian name for the city is, but you look at it and it's an Italian town. The way that it's designed with the hills and everything else.
Motovan?
Motovan.
I believe is the
Sorry
town
for
now.
butchering it.
That's okay. You're right though. It's very built like they could have racing tracks on it.
You'd look at it as an Italian city on the Adriatic for whatever's left. You know what I mean? But they would build these box cars and just go fast. Like, he talked about a story when he asked his dad for a bike because him and Aldo had to share everything. And he was like, I would like a bike, for our birthday. And his dad was like, oh, I bought you a horse.
Yeah. And he said his dad ended up just kind of taking the horse because they didn't want the horse.
It's like that asshole husband who buys his wife something, but it's specifically for him.
A bowling ball with his fingers? Come on,
right
people.
there, Homer Simpson.
But he said him and his brother started parking cars, and the first time he was behind the wheel, he said it was like this feeling that he was just like, this is what I'm meant to do on this planet.
Yeah, he said vroom vroom twice.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
But they're staying in Italy. They have family obviously in America, and at that time the immigration laws were different, so they had to wait for a pretty extended period in this basically refugee settlement because that's the only place they could be taken in at.
Well, that's what he said was his dad pretty much hustled for about 3 or 4 years with this intent of moving his entire family to America. Because I think it was his dad's brother who lived there.
Yeah, his dad's brother lived there, and I find it fascinating, especially as an Italian American, because you see the grit of these people.
Yep.
You see, like, we don't want to go anywhere. We're from Istria. We're Italian. This is our home. This has been our home forever. Extenuating circumstances, not getting one to be murdered by communists, that type of deal. You're like, well, fuck, we got to make something work. We're settled here in Italy. We're foreign. I mean, the difference between Istria and Tuscany is so vast.
Yeah.
So culturally, even ethnically vast. You're just like, what's the best situation for my family? And his father and his mother, Rena, they made the decision to say, it's all about legacy. And that's what my old man always used to preach to me. It's like, it's all about legacy. It's always about giving back to the following generation.
Yep.
And my God, reading about this, it brought tears to my eyes to read about this, honestly. Is just like, well, these are some fantastic people who did right by their family.
Yeah, like you were saying, like the legacy. His dad had this life built for them, and
he had a sweet setup,
and it was kind of destroyed. And then he made this conscious decision, like, "Hey, I'm gonna try and get what I think is your best opportunity for a great life, which was America." And like we were saying, it's not an easy trek. It's not like they're saving up for a couple of months and they're just going to go stay with their uncle. Like, they literally had to save for years and years and dedicate their entire livelihood to this.
And when they showed up in America, they had $125 to their name.
Exactly. It's not like they were coming with a nest egg. It was, they spent everything to get there and sold everything.
I'll go on a rant here. Yeah, you can take Columbus out of Columbus Day, but that is our holiday as Italian Americans. You rename it Mario Andretti Day or Joe DiMaggio Day or Frank Sinatra Day, then we can talk turkey. Hot Wheels Delano Roosevelt gave us that goddamn day, and you better do right by it.
I just decided I'm going to start naming you Nicky Tangent when you start going on tangent. Oh, shit, Nicky Tangent's in here. Gold chains and all.
Hell yeah, in my fucking tracksuit. He is an Italian-American hero, fuckwads.
Well, that's like we've talked about it. That's originally why that holiday was given. But you know what? That's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast for a bunch of hippie commies to discuss.
The history experience on a different network.
There we go. But no, they end up. What he ended up learning though in Italy is he finally got exposed to car racing.
Oh yes, and visualizing
it and being like, oh my god, this thing is so awesome, because he used to park cars outside the Opera House, everything there in Lucca. And when he was 13, he went to the Formula Junior race. He watched the Mille Miglia in 1954 and fell in love with Alberto Ascari, which was like his, not necessarily mentor, but like when you're a kid and you're watching a sport and you're like, that's the guy I want to be.
He was his idol.
Yeah, he was his idol.
Yeah, Ascari had, I think, as many Grand Prix wins as he ended up having, and he was so in awe of this man that he talks about him, and he was just like, me and my brother essentially thought he was the greatest, human
car racer. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, human. Like you said, they were just like, this is our hero.
This is our hero, yeah.
This dude operating this, thing that came out in the last 50 years, just dominating.
And I bet it's because this is this era of cars not being everywhere, and they start to show up everywhere. So in this, and not so much in Italy, but I think when he moves to America, it's a lot more prevalent that we see essentially this car movement happening.
Yeah, and particularly in America over Italy, more people can afford to have even just a regular car to drive, not just like, going around a racetrack. It's like, oh man, I can soup this up. This thing seems pretty sweet. I mean, just awesomeness. And in 1955 at 15, him and his family finally get to come to America. And they settle in Nazareth, which is in the Lehigh Valley area of Pennsylvania. And then him and Aldo start to find out about how awesome driving cars are.
Well, they come to America, and I think they said like 2 or 3 days after they came, they found a track, and they were just like, oh my God.
It was like a 1.5 mile track where they could just dick around and be like, all right, well, I did this today. How can I make this better?
Yep. And that's when they literally start to learn how to be race car drivers, because they're pushing each other. That's the thing that I found really interesting is these twin brothers there's going to be one car, but they're essentially pushing each other to be these racers.
And they're in a 48 Hudson that they work on in their Guido uncle's garage, which is just so perfect.
Yep.
So perfect.
They earn money with their uncle in his garage to work on this 48 Hudson to enter it into these competitions.
And they're not telling their parents about it.
And this is where it's like the classic story where he's like, Aldo was going around the turn, and I was like, he's going too fast. He's going too fast. And he just flips it. And Aldo's like, it just went blank. I was like, I was like completely unconscious. And this is I think this is in 1958 or 59. And Aldo, he says he wakes up and he just sees his dad. And I was like, oh, my dad, I feel so bad for him, because he's just like crying, like, what are you guys doing? Because car racing back then was so dangerous.
Hey everybody, just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs. Oh yeah, no, and I mean, when you think of the history of car racing, It's basically invented because of our shitty government's prohibition policies.
Yeah, a bootlegging.
Yeah, you're just like, oh man, booze is legal again. What are we supposed to do with these awesome souped up cars that we used to go county to county with moonshine?
Yeah.
And
why don't we race each other?
I'll tell you what, let's race these motherfuckers.
I'll tell you what, give me some of that moonshine and we'll see what's what.
Let's drink some moonshine and race these.
That was when boys were boys and deaths were more prevalent.
Yes, prevalent.
It's such a ridiculous thing, but that's what we were saying. Like it's so much more unregulated.
No, it's unregulated. You're basically dealing with mad scientists and dudes who just say, if you're not first, you're last, Ricky Bobby.
Ooh, I love that. But that's the mentality.
And they had brought it up, and we'll talk about it for his Indy 500 win. It's like astronauts. It's almost like astronauts in the respect that, like, there's a great unknown. You have these souped up bootlegging cars, stock cars. Let's go and race them.
Yep.
You get to somebody like Mario who's like, oh man, I spent like half a decade in a refugee camp. What do I care? Like,
no, seriously.
This is the dream.
That was one of the things that he said was if he didn't feel like he was going too fast, it wasn't worth it or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't going to win essentially. Like he definitely pushed every single corner he could.
Adrenaline junkies is what they are. And in 60 and 61, he won 21 of 46 races in modified stock car racing.
Whoa. When you say modified, you mean those little LP cars?
Little LP
little 3/4 car.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to say the word, but I just want to say this is exactly what they were called. They were called midget cars because they were 3/4 the size.
Short people cars.
Oh, damn it. But this
Little
is something
cars.
that I want to point this out because this is where he starts in this single seater kind of car, like
basically an IndyCar.
An IndyCar, exactly. Yeah. And he goes out and he does I think he does 100 in these, and he's really doing well, but he can't get any kind of sponsorship. He can't get a car. And that's where we see him go over to what I think is sprint car.
Yeah, sprint car. Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think, sprint car and stock car, both of them.
Yeah.
And this is where I think he transcends the sport because he literally will race with anything on anything.
And that's what I found so fascinating researching about him outside of the historical perspective is like he's not into one thing.
Not even a little bit.
It's just like, oh, let me see this car. Yeah, I feel like I can drive it.
As long as it's a car.
Yeah.
That's his big thing. His handling is so above everybody else's with I feel like his knowledge with the car. He's just like, literally, I'll do it on dirt. I'll do it in a city. I don't care.
He has like the Ricky Bobby attitude of, break it, Pepe Le Pew!
Well, it's true, man. He hated crepes. He's an Italian American.
Moron. All right. In 64, he ends up becoming a naturalized citizen.
Yep, which had to have been such an amazing thing for these Andrettis that coming to this country. I remember him saying when he was 15, they came through Ellis Island like so many people did. But when you see the Statue of Liberty, is like we saw that old lady and we all made that like realization like, oh, we're here. Our lives are going to change.
Our lives are going to change because the streets are paved with gold and we're making the American dream happen in a race car.
Well, you say the streets are paved with gold, but they show up and there's a track right there and that's where the gold comes from.
That's exactly where the gold comes from. But he starts in the U.S. Automotive Club for stock cars in 65 and then eventually won a race in 67 and finished 7th in points. And down the road, he ends up winning in 67, which makes him an anomaly because, like you said, he'll race on any track and any car that he wants to. He wins the 67 Daytona 500.
Well, this is what I find so interesting from 60, essentially when he gets his citizenship, 64, 65, to about like 80 when he starts doing Formula One, he jumps around to everything.
Yeah.
Like if they have a racing competition, you're going to see Mario Andretti entering, and you're just going to be like, God damn, there's that little Italian man.
Why is
back again?
Why is this 5'3" Guinea beating all of us?
That's the other thing.
Should be, why is this 5'3" Guinea beating all of us?
I don't know, but we better do something because he literally is not just competing in all these different events, but like we're about to go through, he's winning all these different events. The NASCAR 67 Daytona 500. And then he gets into this thing called the International Race of Champions.
Yep.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I
Which
saw
was
that.
billed as like the all-star game for racing. But he dominates.
And, you know, he finishes second in 75, 76, and 77, 78. And then he wins it in 78, 79.
Yeah.
And then peppered in there, I want to bring up
there's so many others.
Yeah.
Sprint cars, 64 win at Salem Speedway.
Yeah, and I mean, even though he finished third in the Indy 500 in 65, he's still that, you know, units rookie of the year.
Oh, yeah. I saw that too. Yeah. That's what I mean is we're jumping around, but he has so many wins throughout this.
All he does is win, win, win.
60s, late 60s, 70s era that he is so ridiculously amazing.
And he keeps kicking ass because in 67 and 60 or 67 and 68, he ends up barely losing out to AJ Foyt and Bobby Unser in the Indy 500, but 69 was his year. Like, if you look at it, 69 was Mario Andretti's probably crowning achievement.
Yes.
Because not only does he win the Indy 500 and season championship, he basically showcases to the world how much of a badass he is. Because from 66 to 69, he wins 24 of 85 races.
Well, I want to bring this up. So this is when he's IndyCar, and they call it Champ Car.
Yeah, Champ Car.
He meets up with this guy, Rufus Gray, but he really meets up with his
mechanic, right?
His mechanic, Clint Bronner, I believe is his name. And what he was talking shit because people were like, hey, you should go check out this guy Mario. And he was like, well, I don't really want sprint car guys because literally they were dying.
The death rate was insane.
And he said, like, those guys are insane. I don't want them. They're not like real racers. He went and saw Mario once, and he said he was just like, oh, this is our new racer. And essentially went out and was like, hey, we'll sponsor you for IndyCar. I'll be your pit guy. And like you were saying, 69, everything comes together, and they essentially win 9 races as a team, including the Indy 500 and the season championship.
Winning either the Daytona 500 or Indy 500 is like a benchmark for a career. Like, you do that, you're golden. Winning both, holy fucking shit.
Yeah, it proves what a versatile driver he is because he is so ridiculous. Like, yeah. And this is when he essentially, all this stuff is happening in these late 60s. He meets up with Colin Chapman, who's a Formula One owner of the Lotus team.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, one day I kind of want to do Formula One. And he goes, okay, call me as soon as you're ready. And then 68, 69 season, he has this amazing season, and he calls him and he's like, all right, I'm ready.
I'm ready to remake all of your cars and make them badass.
No, it's pretty ridiculous what he does for Formula One, because this is, like we were saying, he comes from absolutely idolizing Alberto Ascari, and that's where Ascari pretty much made his fame.
Exactly.
Was Formula One in these Grand Prix, in these, essentially Italian Grand Prix that he got to watch. And he teams up with, actually he does like part-time.
Yeah, he like moonlights almost.
Because he has so much other racing going on, because we see him still doing all this other racing, but he part-times with, I saw it was interesting, he part-times with Lotus and Ferrari and I think one other company, but he actually wins the, I think the Brazilian Grand Prix with Ferrari.
Yeah, he just is like, oh, there's a track.
While he's part-timing it. Just to make that clear, like he's winning Grand Prix while he's still doing all this other racing. And I feel like Formula One is the one that's the most different.
Yeah, because
single-seater
with
the courses.
Yeah, much lower to the ground than everything else.
Oh, now we're going to get into that low ground. All right.
But in 77, he won the U.S. Grand Prix in, I believe, Long Beach. And then in 78, he won the Italian Grand Prix.
All right, now I gotta go back just a sec.
Okay, back.
I gotta go back to in 77. They had these Lotuses.
Yes.
So, or actually, no, let me go back, because when he starts to become full-time Formula One, he partners up with Pernari.
Yeah.
I know I'm saying that wrong. And they do a year and then they fold. So the team folds and he's furious. And he teams back up with Lotus, who he's kind of done some stuff with, but Lotus is on the downswing. They can't
make the right car.
They can't get a competitive car. So they keep losing all these great drivers because they can't create a competitive car. And this is where I think Mario's greatest asset comes, is he can pretty much perfect and show them what they need to perfect a great car. So in 77, hold on, I want to see this because it was the Lotus 76, excuse me. He said the car was so bad on straightaways that it's his best year of driving, because he had to make up so much essentially time on turns. He was like, I had to be beating guys by 0.3 seconds on every single turn with this car because the straightaway was so bad.
But all it did was make him a better driver.
And this is the first year he's with Lotus. And then Lotus has this thing called ground effect.
Yes.
And ground effect is where it gives it more downforce without causing drag.
Yeah.
So it essentially just makes the car faster and easier to control.
Exactly.
And Mario takes that, and that's when you see him dominate Formula One.
It's like giving him cheat codes, and that's not fair.
So the 76 is awful. Because this is how the cars come out. They come out by the year. The 77 is way improved. Like you said, he wins 4 races like the one in Long Beach. And then the 78 comes out, and actually, no, I'm sorry. It's the Lotus 79.
Yeah.
And his partner,
Ronnie Peterson.
Peterson,
yeah.
Is it Peterson or?
I thought it was Pearson.
I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was. I read Pearson. I wrote down my notes.
I wrote down Peterson. Damn it.
We could be wrong.
We could both be wrong. Well, he said that he got to try the car out first because obviously Mario's doing all this other shit, and Mario calls him and he's like, and I know Ronnie, and he's like being coy, and I'm like, well, how's the car handle? And he's like, it's okay, it's going around corners okay. I mean, I think you're gonna like it just fine. And he said as soon as he came out and tried out this Lotus 79, nobody else was getting close to either of them in this year.
No, the team they competed on was just dominating.
And it had all to do with what Mario said was them adjusting the car to the way that they could drive, and this ground effect pretty much revolutionizing these cars.
Yeah, no, totally. Unfortunately,
yep, and that's where
Grand Prix.
Yep, the Italian Grand Prix. This was something else that I saw him say, was he felt like there was animosity from other drivers, that him and Ronnie were almost showboating a bit.
Yeah, they were kicking the shit out of people.
And and I'm pretty sure this is the Italian Grand Prix where Ronnie crashes first lap.
And he ends up dying.
Well, he said the crash was the other driver's fault.
Yeah.
And was suspect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I just want to say how fucked up that is, because he said that he was just like, next year, if I wasn't winning the world championship, Ronnie was going to win it.
Yeah.
It was like that kind of thing. And another thing that he said, because he had a bunch of burns in both of his legs, this is the medical establishment of that era, was they felt like his injuries shouldn't have caused his death.
Yeah.
And nowadays it would have been like a wrongful death suit that they essentially.
Easily. Yeah.
And there was a bunch of animosity coming off of this, which he states, Mario Andretti states that this should have been one of, if not the happiest day in his racing career, and it turned out to be one of his worst.
They didn't even celebrate after he won the race.
Not even a tiny bit. They were
just
there was no, yeah.
I lost one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And our team lost Ronnie Pearson.
Yeah. No, it's awful. It's to think like, yeah, no, it's so awful.
Yeah. But goes to IndyCar 82 to 94. And, you know, even in his 40s, he's still beating people. Yeah,
he's still winning races. In Indy, I like this. They call it the Andretti curse.
Oh, yeah.
I think he only finished 5 Indy car races. He entered like over 30 or over 20. And he only ended up finishing 5 because his car just always shits out.
Well, and not only that, both his sons, Michael and Jeff, who also race, haven't won.
Yep.
And then his nephew, John, too.
Well, we got to talk about this, the podium.
The podium, yes.
So, actually, let's go back because I'm reading this real quick. Sorry. Michael and Jeff both started racing. And in June 15th, 86 in Portland, Father's Day.
Yeah.
So this is in 86. Michael, who was a better racer, everyone said Michael was just like the next, you know, and Jeff was good, but Michael was always like the better. He said he was up by 2 laps.
Yeah.
In Portland,
this is great.
And he was like, our car was having trouble picking up the last, 5 gallons of fuel. So literally he's on the last lap and his car's engine won't pick up the fuel, but it's sputtering.
Yeah.
So like he's in this like ridiculously nice car that's just like and then he literally sees his dad coming up on the last straightaway right behind him. And he's like, I see my dad in the rear and my car just dies. So it just won't pick up fuel, and then as soon as my dad gets next to me, it picks up fuel, and you can see it. It's such an interesting.
It's so cool.
It's one of the best racing things, and it literally they both pick up right at the same time, and Mario Andretti ends up winning.
And you can see him at the finish line. They're both looking at each other.
Yep.
It would remind me if my dad and I were racing cars, except Mario would be giving the middle finger to me.
So Mario wins by the closest margin ever. And one of the great moments post race is Michael looks at him and says, Happy Father's Day. Yeah.
Oh, man. Good stuff. But he races into his 50s, which I find is so fascinating.
Oh, man.
Because he keeps basically dominating. His last win was in 1993. So he's a 53-year-old man winning at Phoenix International Speedway.
I love that. That win is so awesome. And then I love in 1991, Milwaukee, he himself, Michael, and Aldo's son, John, all take 1, 2, and 3 on this podium. So it's literally an Andretti podium. And that's never happened before, and it'll never happen again.
And if you think about it, it's the late 1940s. You're fleeing your home with all the shit you can put in a truck. And then in America, 40 years later, you're on top of the world. On top of the world, and in a sport that is very European, very worldwide, and you're just giving the middle finger to everybody. That's amazing.
Well, I want to say this, and this is why Mario Andretti is so important, is Americans dominate a lot in American sports.
Yeah.
Mario Andretti dominated in this worldwide sport.
He dominated in a worldwide sport, but then you look at his record in NASCAR. You look at his stock car racing.
That's what I mean.
It's like, oh my God.
All of it, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
But this is what his father essentially, beyond his father's wildest dreams, why it's so important. And I saw in his later life, he ends up owning a giant farm. And he said that was the only thing he really wanted his father to see was this cycle, this comeback that the Andrettis get this family farm later in life.
Dude, and I mean, I probably know it more than anybody else. With the way that I grew up, it's all legacy based. It's all passing it down and bettering everything, no matter whether it's taken from you. I mean, this is a guy, 1986, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame, driver of the year in 67, 78, 84, driver of the century by the AP in the late 20th century. I mean, this guy is in every Hall of Fame you could think of as far as racing. I believe he's October 23rd, 2006, Commendatore by the Italian government, which is like our highest civilian honor for like the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He was named since 2007 the mayor of the Croatian town that he's from for all of the Italian exiles. I mean, he's a hero to everybody everywhere.
Yeah, and he is like the sports figure that you want to idolize. A lot of the time we have these post-career stories.
Yeah.
He is such a great human being that this is one of these ones that I didn't know really much about him, and it was one of my favorite episode researches.
Dude, when I saw Istrian exile, I was just like, giddy up. Like, honestly, I was just like, this, oh my God, I know entirely too much about this outside of sports.
And that's from me and Nikki Tangent. Hey everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say, give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.